So I'm Renee Fleming, and I'm delighted to be here with Denis Dumas and Stewart Cubley, and we're going to hear about their investigator grant and what they plan to do. So tell us about your project.
Well, the plan is, and we're actually collecting data in under 2 weeks now, so we're really ramping up. It's getting exciting. But we're putting on a week-long residential arts camp at a place called the Omega Institute in upstate New York. And while the folks who are attending are painting, they'll also be filling out a suite of psychological measures at a number of time points throughout the week. So we'll be able to, after all is said and done, model their psychological states and how they change throughout the experience of painting over the course of the week. We're particularly interested in something called a flow state, the idea that someone can become so immersed in their art that they lose the sense of time, they lose their self consciousness. And well, it's typically thought to be a very, very positive experience. And so we're kind of hunting for flow states. We're hoping we can capture them, and we're hoping to statistically predict who is more likely to enter a flow state and when, and what were they doing when it happened.
I love this.
Okay.
I want to take this class. So, what drew you to this topic?
Well, for me, I'm fascinated by creativity. Human creativity is what I study. I've been lucky to build a career as an academic psychologist studying uh, human creative processes. And one of the mysteries, I suppose, in creativity is how do people develop the intrinsic motivation that's necessary to want to be creative, to want to put themselves out there, to take a creative risk, or perhaps to persist through the adversity that inevitably happens when you're creative. And at least theoretically, the best answer to that question seems to be that they develop the intrinsic motivation because of how pleasurable and joyful the experience of the flow state is when they're actually doing the work.
Stewart, you've seen this probably throughout your work.
Well, yeah, and interestingly, Dennis is putting into words, more scientific words, what I've experienced over many decades of doing this. Because we set up an environment, and as the painting experience, which is the name of what we do, and we set up an environment in which people are not going to be instructed at all in art. In other words, they are going to be given a place to paint, and they're going to be given brushes and colors to be available. And we paint in silence, and we essentially say, okay, get started. And we don't have any model, and there's no theme, and there's no instruction about how to paint. And so it's a wonderful challenge. It's for people. It's a wonderful confrontation with themselves because they're expecting somehow to be guided, and they're having to look for their guidance internally rather than externally. And it's very safe. We don't have any. There's no comments. There's no evaluation. There's no verbalization of. There's no back and forth about what you like and what you don't like. So it's a very much of a meditative process, so to speak, and there definitely is this transition from more of an outward-looking psychology to a flow state, like Dennis is mentioning, where people click in and they find themselves guided from some internal voice, and they're directed to the color that they want without really choosing. It's just like, oh, it calls me, and they're directed to a place on the paper on the painting, and they follow that. They're directed to the size of the brush, and there's a way in which there's an internal guidance that kicks in, and it's different for each person, and there's an intelligence behind it. It's not just random. There's a way in which at various stages people recognize that they have been taken to a place internally that is was needed to be visited, that was somehow insightful for them personally. And so it's really a very exciting experience to have, um, with new people as well as people. There'll be quite a few people in this group who've done it before as well.
Oh, fantastic. And so tell us about the methodology, the study design, what you plan to do and how you're going to do it.
Yeah, it's a study design that's often called experience sampling, or maybe some folks would call it like micro longitudinal, like many time points of data collection over a relatively short period of time. So what we expect to be able to do is track the changes in the amount of flow that people are able to access over the course of the week. And well, we don't really know what it's going to look like. I sort of suspect it's going to be kind of jagged, like it will peak at certain times and trough at certain times. A counter hypothesis might be it will grow slowly over the course of the week, or maybe it will decline. I don't think anyone really knows. And what we'll do is we'll use a statistical model to say, well, when it goes up, what was that person doing otherwise at that time? What other things do we have in terms of their questionnaire data? Like, for example, their pre-existing personality attributes, their motivational attributes, we have emotional and affective scales, and we'll try to predict what is it that kind of nudged that person into this space that we believe to be so important.
And last question, are you planning on interrupting them at work to get them to say where they are, or do they have to self-report after a period of time?
This is something we went back and forth on. We decided, I think this is the best decision, and Stewart and I went back and forth. We thought about it. We're going to do retrospective, but very often. So like every 2 hours, they'll be reporting the amount of flow they felt in the previous 2 hours. That way we won't have to interrupt them if they are in a flow state, but we won't be asking them to remember very long periods of time. So hopefully we'll be able to kind of have our cake and eat it too a little bit. We'll be able to observe the flow state while also not ruining it.
Very good.
But
Okay.
that is the art. That is the art of it on my end, kind of like how do we see it but not break it?
Not influence it.
So,
And I'd be so interested to learn just how beneficial this is for people. I think I've never really heard of a project quite like this, the work that you do, Stewart. And it's amazing.
Well, Renee, one measure of that would be the fact out of the 36 or 38 people that are coming to paint, probably there's 5 or 6 people who have not done it before.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And they're drawn to it somehow, or word of
They're
mouth.
drawn to it. Yeah. There's a way in which that it leaves a feeling of wanting to do more.
Well, thank you so much. It's wonderful to meet you both.
Okay. Thank you, Renee.